The Eternals have been studying Jack's diner for 2 weeks now, and their presence was making everyone nervous. These ancient beings claimed to have witnessed the birth and death of civilizations, and they observed everything with an intensity that made even the warrior Thraxians uncomfortable. Jack continued his daily routine, cooking meals for the steady stream of alien visitors while the Eternals watched and took notes. They never ate anything themselves, claiming they had evolved beyond the need for physical sustenance. But they were fascinated by the social dynamics that happened around food. In 10,000 years of observation, their leader Eternal had told Jack, "We have never seen such rapid cultural change spread across so many species. Your influence is remarkable for such a short-lived being." Jack was flipping pancakes when Carl announced another approaching ship. This one made his heart sink. It was a sleek corporate vessel with the Nexus Corporation logo prominently displayed on its hull. "Trouble," Jack muttered, watching the ship land among the collection of alien vessels already parked outside his diner. Patricia Wells emerged from the ship, followed by a team of corporate security officers and legal advisors. She was a tall woman in an expensive suit who looked completely out of place on the dusty surface of Mars. Jack had dealt with her type before during his mining days. Corporate executives who saw everything in terms of profit margins and market opportunities. "Mr. Turner," she said as she entered the diner, her nose wrinkling at the smell of cooking food. "I'm Patricia Wells, CEO of Nexus Corporation. We need to talk." The diner was currently hosting a mixed group of aliens, including several Thraxians, a family of Korth, and 3 Aquari in their mobile water tanks. They all turned to watch the new arrivals with obvious interest. "I'm in the middle of the lunch rush," Jack replied, not looking up from the grill. "You can wait in line like everyone else." Patricia's face flushed with anger. "Mr. Turner, you don't seem to understand the situation you're in. This entire settlement belongs to Nexus Corporation. You're operating an illegal business on our property. The mining lease expired when the settlement was abandoned," Jack said calmly. "I checked with the Mars Colonial Authority. This land is now classified as open territory." "That classification is about to change," Patricia said, pulling out a legal pad. "Nexus has filed for exclusive development rights to this entire region. We're going to build a proper spaceport and trading complex here." The aliens in the diner were following the conversation with growing concern. Thraxdoc, the Thraxian leader, stood up to his full 8-foot height. "This human provides valuable service," Thraxdoc rumbled. "You would remove him?" Patricia looked at the massive warrior alien with obvious nervousness. "This is a private business matter. It doesn't concern you." "It concerns all of us," said Skatal, who had arrived that morning for his weekly visit. "This place has become important to many species." "Exactly why we need to take control," Patricia replied, her confidence returning. "Do you have any idea how much money passes through here? Ships from dozens of star systems, rare materials, advanced technologies. This could be worth billions." Jack turned off the grill and faced her directly. "It's not for sale." "Everything is for sale, Mr. Turner. We're prepared to offer you 10 million credits for your cooperation. And if I refuse," Patricia smiled coldly, "then we'll have you removed for violation of corporate property rights. Security, show him the eviction notice." One of the corporate security officers stepped forward with a legal document. As he reached for Jack, several things happened that once, Thraxdoc moved to block the officer's path. 2 core soldiers positioned themselves near the exits. The Aquari began making aggressive bubbling sounds from their tanks. "I think you should leave," Jack said quietly. "You can't threaten us," Patricia snapped. "These aliens have no legal authority here." "Perhaps not," said a new voice from the back of the diner. Eternals stepped forward, their forms shimmering with energy. "But we do." Patricia stared at the ancient being with growing alarm. "Who are you?" "We are the Eternals. We were ancient when your species was learning to use fire. We have declared this establishment to be under our protection." "You have no jurisdiction here," Patricia said. but her voice was shaking. "We have jurisdiction wherever we choose to exercise it," Eternal replied. "This human and his establishment have become culturally significant to dozens of species. Interfering with this place would be ... unwise." The corporate security team was backing toward the door, clearly intimidated by the collection of alien species surrounding them. Patricia was trying to maintain her composure, but Jack could see fear in her eyes. "This isn't over," she said. "Nexus Corporation has legal rights here." "Your legal rights are meaningless," Thraxstock said, moving closer to her. "We do not recognize your authority." After the corporate team left, the diner was buzzing with conversation. The aliens were clearly upset by the threat to their favorite restaurant, and they began discussing ways to protect it. "We could station a permanent guard here," suggested one of the core soldiers. "My fleet could establish a defensive perimeter around Mars," offered Thraxstock. "Such measures may not be necessary," Eternal said. "But we must be prepared for further corporate interference." Jack was touched by their concern, but he was also worried. He had never wanted his small diner to become the center of an interstellar conflict. Over the following days, more ships arrived as word spread about the corporate threat. Species that had never worked together began coordinating their efforts to protect Jack's diner. The Sectai provided advanced communication equipment. The Corp offered military expertise. The Aquarii shared intelligence about corporate movements. In nearby systems, the Zephyrians, despite being gaseous beings, somehow managed to establish an early warning network that could detect approaching ships from incredible distances. Even the normally peaceful species were prepared to fight to protect the place that had brought them so much joy. "This is unprecedented," Drent observed, recording everything for his academic research. Multiple species forming an alliance to protect a single cultural site. It's the first recorded instance of pan-galactic cooperation for non-military purposes. Jack found himself becoming an unofficial diplomat, helping coordinate between species that had very different communication methods and cultural practices. Carl proved invaluable in translation and logistics, managing the complex schedules of alien visitors and their various dietary requirements. "You've created something special here," Carl observed one evening as they cleaned up after serving dinner. To a mixed group of 23 beings from 7 different species, this place has become more than a restaurant. It's a symbol of peaceful cooperation. The next morning brought news that Jack had been dreading. Carl's sensors detected a large fleet approaching Mars, and the ship configurations matched Nexus Corporation vessels. 12 ships in total, Carl reported. Corporate security vessels, construction equipment, and what appears to be a mobile command center. Jack looked out at the collection of alien ships parked around his diner. There were now over 30. Vessels from a dozen different species, all here to protect Earth's kitchen. "Looks like we're going to have company," Jack said, checking his food supplies. If there was going to be a standoff, he wanted to make sure everyone stayed fed. The corporate fleet took up position in Mars orbit, while the alien ships formed a protective formation around the diner. For the first time in galactic history, a corporate expansion was being opposed by a coalition of alien species united not by politics or economics, but by their shared appreciation for good food and human hospitality. Jack started preparing what might be the most important meal of his life, knowing that the future of his small diner could determine the course of interstellar relations for generations to come. 6 months had passed since the first alien ship landed near Jack's diner. What started as a simple act of kindness had grown into something Jack never expected. Ships from dozens of different species now made regular stops at New Phoenix, not for fuel or repairs, but specifically to visit Earth's kitchen. Jack had expanded his storage areas and upgraded the diner's life support systems with technology gifted by grateful alien visitors. The small restaurant that once served mining families now hosted beings from across the galaxy, each seeking the mysterious human experience called good food. The Thraxians were the most surprising visitors yet. They arrived in a massive warship that looked like it could destroy a small moon. Jack had been nervous when Carl announced their approach, but the fierce warrior species turned out to be gentle giants once they tasted his cooking. "We have conquered 17 worlds," their leader Thraxdoc had announced on their first visit, his voice booming through the translator. "We are the most feared warriors in 3-star systems." "That's nice," Jack had replied, setting a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes in front of the 8-foot-tall alien. "Try this." Thraxdoc had taken one bite and immediately gone silent. His massive frame had started shaking, and for a moment Jack thought the alien was having some kind of attack. Then he realized the Thraxian was crying. "This food, Thraxdoc had whispered, it reminds me of home. Of my mother's nest warmers when I was young. That had been 3 months ago. Now the Thraxians visited every few weeks, and their entire crew had become regular customers. The fierce warriors would sit quietly at Jack's counter, eating comfort food and talking about their families back home. Jack had learned that underneath their scary reputation, the Thraxians were deeply emotional beings who missed their loved ones while on long military campaigns. Today, Jack was preparing lunch for an even more unusual group. The Aquaria had traveled from the ocean worlds of the Centauri system, bringing their own water tanks so they could survive on dry Mars. They were graceful beings that looked like a cross between dolphins and octopi, with translucent skin that showed the flow of fluids beneath. "The seasoning techniques you showed us," bubbled Aquarlin, the group's leader. "They have revolutionized our underwater gardens. Our kelp farms now produce flavors we never imagined possible." Jack smiled as he prepared their specialized liquid meal, a nutrient-rich soup that the Aquarii could process through their filtering organs. "I'm glad it helped. How are your people? Adapting to the new cooking methods?" "There is much excitement," Aquarlin replied. "Our young ones speak of nothing but flavor combinations and seasoning experiments. We have created a new cast of food prepares based on your teachings." This was happening throughout the galaxy. Each species that visited Jack's diner returned home with new ideas about food preparation and the social aspects of eating. Carl had been tracking the reports, and the results were remarkable. The Sktai had established their first restaurants, places where people gathered not just to consume nutrition pace, but to enjoy meals together. The Corp had developed new agricultural techniques to grow food for pleasure rather than just efficiency. Even the gas-dwelling Zephyrians had found ways to create flavor experiences in their atmospheric cities. "You have started a revolution," Carl observed as he helped serve the Aquarii their meal. "A cultural revolution that spans multiple star systems." "I just cook food," Jack replied, but he was beginning to understand that it was more than that. He was teaching alien species about concepts they had never experienced before. The Zephyrians were perhaps the most amazing example. They existed as conscious gas clouds, beings of pure energy and atmosphere who had never needed physical sustenance. But they had become fascinated by the concept of flavor and had developed ways to experience taste through chemical analysis. "We absorb the essence of your cooking through atmospheric sampling," Zephyra had explained during their last visit. "The complex molecular structures create patterns in our consciousness that we find pleasing." Jack had started preparing special aromatic dishes for the Zephyrians, creating clouds of flavorful steam that they could experience. Watching a being made of swirling gas express joy over the smell of fresh bread was something Jack would never get used to. The diner had become more than just a restaurant. It was a cultural exchange center where different species learned about human concepts of hospitality, community, and the emotional connections that food could create. Jack found himself serving as an unofficial ambassador between races that had never interacted peacefully before. The Thraxians and the court had been enemies for centuries, but they now sat side by side at Jack's counter, sharing meals and discussing seasoning techniques. The Aquarii had begun trading rare sea minerals with the Sectai in exchange for spice cultivation knowledge. Species that had never even heard of each other were forming friendships over plates of human-prepared food. "This is unprecedented," reported Drenth, a scholar from the Vektai Academic Collective who had come to study the phenomenon. Never in recorded galactic history have so many different species collaborated on cultural exchange. The catalyst appears to be the human concept of hospitality and shared meals. Jack found it hard to believe that his small diner was causing such widespread changes. He was just doing what felt natural, taking care of people who needed food and friendship. The reports from homeworlds are fascinating, Drawn continued, showing Jack a holographic display of data. Crime rates have decreased on worlds that have adopted human cooking practices. Social cooperation has increased. Even military conflicts have been postponed while opposing forces experiment with food preparation. The most remarkable change was happening among the Thraxians. Their military culture had been built on conquest and domination, but exposure to comfort food and the concept of hospitality was changing their entire society. "My warriors no longer speak only of battle," Thraxstock had confided to Jack during a recent visit. "They speak of the foods their families will prepare when they return home. They remember that they fight not for conquest, but to protect those they love." Several Thraxian military campaigns have been called off as soldiers requested leave to return home and cook for their families. The warrior culture was slowly transforming into something more nurturing and protective. The economic impact was also significant. Species that had previously focused only on efficient resource extraction were now developing agriculture and food production industries. Entire planets were being terraformed not for mining or manufacturing, but for growing ingredients that could be used in cooking. "You have created a new economy," explained Sectal during one of his regular visits. He had become something of a food critic among his people, writing reviews of different dishes and cooking techniques. Worlds that were considered worthless because they had no rare minerals are now valuable for their agricultural potential. Jack was stirring a pot of soup when Carl announced another incoming ship. This one was different from anything they had seen before, massive beyond belief and clearly of unknown origin. "The vessel is approximately 5 times larger than the Thraxian warship," Carl reported. "Design characteristics do not match any known species in our database." Jack wiped his hands on his apron and looked out the window. The ship was indeed enormous, big enough to carry thousands of beings. As it landed, the ground shook under its weight. "Well," Jack said, checking his supplies, "I hope they're hungry." The ship's entry port opened, and hundreds of beings began emerging. They were tall and elegant, with features that seemed to shift and change as Jack watched them. Their leader approached the diner with movements that were almost too graceful to be real. "We are the Eternals," the leader announced in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We have existed since before your son was born. We have traveled across the galaxy to understand this phenomenon called human hospitality." Jack straightened his apron and opened the diner door. "Welcome to Earth's Kitchen. I'm Jack. What can I get you folks?" The Eternal leader paused, apparently surprised by the casual greeting. "You would serve food to beings you have never met." "That's what we do here," Jack replied. "Everyone's welcome." For the first time in millennia, the ancient Eternals showed an expression of genuine surprise. Behind them, hundreds of their people waited to experience something completely new to their vast experience. Jack rolled up his sleeves and got back to work. It was going to be a busy day. The Sectai stayed for 3 days while their ship's auto-repair systems fixed the damage. During that time, Jack learned more about his alien guests than he had ever imagined possible. They were traders and explorers from a system called Victor, and they had been attacked by pirates while carrying rare minerals to a distant colony. Sktal, who seemed to be their leader, spoke the best English of the 3. He explained that their people had learned human languages from intercepted communications and trade contacts, but they had never actually met a human before. The concept of cooking food for pleasure rather than just nutrition was completely foreign to them. "On our world," Sktal explained while watching Jack prepare breakfast, "we consume nutrition paste 3 times per day. It contains all required nutrients for survival. But does it taste good?" Jack asked, cracking eggs into a pan. Taste is not important, Sectal replied. Only nutrition matters. Jack shook his head. You're missing out on one of life's greatest pleasures. The aliens have been fascinated by every meal Jack prepared. They tried everything he offered them, from simple toast with jam to more complex dishes like pancakes with syrup and scrambled eggs with vegetables. Each new flavor seemed to amaze them more than the last. Carl had proven particularly useful in communicating with the aliens. His translation programs could process their clicking language much faster than Jack could learn it. Through Carl, Jack learned that the Sectai were part of a large trading network that spanned dozens of star systems. Your android is very advanced, Sectai observed on their second day. We have seen few artificial beings with such sophisticated programming. Carl's been with me for 15 years, Jack said. He's more than just a machine now. He's family. This concept also seemed to puzzle the aliens. They had technology and trade relationships, but the idea of emotional attachment to an artificial being was new to them. On their third morning, as Jack was preparing what he privately called a farewell breakfast, Sectal made an announcement that surprised him. We wish to repay your kindness, the alien said. We will tell others of this place. You don't need to do that, Jack replied. I was happy to help. This is important, Sectal insisted. What you have done for us. It is not normal behavior in our experience. Jack flipped pancakes while considering this. What do you mean? In our travels, we have met many species. Most require payment for assistance. Some attack strangers. You gave help with no payment required. You shared food freely. This is unusual. It's just being decent, Jack said. Anyone would do the same. No, Sectal said firmly. Not anyone. This is special. The aliens departed that afternoon, their ship fully repaired, and their cargo holds topped off with supplies from the diner storage room. Jack refused to take payment for the food or supplies, which seemed to amaze them even more. We will not forget this kindness, Sectal said as they prepared to leave. Others will learn of the human who helps travelers. Jack waved goodbye as their ship lifted off, leaving him alone with Carl once again. The diner felt emptier than before, but Jack was glad he had been able to help. He had no idea that his 3-day hospitality would change everything. 2 weeks later, Carl's sensors detected another approaching ship. This one was different from the Sectai vessel, larger and more angular, with a design that looked almost crystalline. It landed in the same spot where the first alien ship had touched down. More customers, Jack said, wiping down the counter. I hope they're hungry. The new aliens were completely different from the Sectai. They were shorter and broader, with hard shells that looked like armor. Their faces were hidden behind what might have been natural faceplates, and they moved with quick, jerky motions that reminded Jack of insects. There were 4 of them, and they approached the diner with obvious caution. One of them stepped forward and spoke in a buzzing voice that Carl's translator processed quickly. You are the food giver, the alien said. The one called Jack. That's me, Jack replied, surprised. How did you know? The Skate told us. We are Korth. We have traveled far to experience this cooking, Jack smiled. Well, you've come to the right place. Have a seat, and I'll make you something special. The Korth arranged themselves at the counter, their movements careful and deliberate. Jack could see that they were studying everything in the diner with intense interest. What kind of food do your people eat? Jack asked. Processed nutrients, the Leg Korth replied. Efficient, no waste. But do you enjoy it? The Korth exchanged buzzing sounds that might have been conversation. Enjoyment is not relevant to nutrition. That's what the Skay said too, Jack muttered, starting to cook. You're all missing the point. Jack decided to make them something hearty and flavorful. He prepared thick steaks with grilled vegetables and mashed potatoes, seasoning everything carefully. The smell filled the diner, and he noticed the Korth becoming more alert as the aromas reached them. When he set the plates in front of them, the Korth stared at the food for a long moment. Then, Following Jack's demonstration, they began to eat. Reaction was immediate and dramatic. All four Korth froze with their first bites, their bodies going completely still. For a moment, Jack worried that he had poisoned them. Then they began making rapid buzzing sounds to each other, their voices rising with what sounded like excitement. This is double quotes the lead Korth struggled to find words. We have no term for this experience. It's called enjoying your food, Jack said. Most people find it pretty nice. The Korth ate with the same amazement the Secti had shown, but their reaction was more intense. They seemed to be experiencing something completely new to their species. How is this possible? One of them asked. The nutrients are the same, but the experience is completely different. It's all in the preparation, Jack explained. The way. You combine ingredients, the cooking method, the seasoning. It's not just about nutrition. It's about creating something that makes people happy. The Korth stayed for 5 days, asking Jack to prepare different dishes each day. They were particularly fascinated by the concept of seasoning and how different spices could change the entire character of a meal. Jack found himself explaining not just cooking techniques, but the whole human approach to food and hospitality. On our world, the lead Korth explained, efficiency is everything. We live in hives where every action serves the colony. This concept, pleasure, it is foreign to us, but you like it? Jack asked. We find it disturbing and wonderful at the same time. It makes us think about things we have never considered. Before they left, the Korth insisted on paying Jack with a collection of rare crystals that they claimed were valuable in many star systems. Jack tried to refuse, but they became agitated when he wouldn't accept payment. This knowledge you have shared, the lead Korth said. It is worth more than crystals. But we must give something in return. Just tell your friends about the diner. Jack said, that's payment enough. The Korth promised to spread word of Jack's hospitality throughout their trading network. As their ship departed, Jack realized that something significant was happening. Word of his diner was spreading across the galaxy. Over the following weeks, more ships began arriving. A group of tall, thin beings who breathed methane and had to eat through special filters. A species that looked like living clouds, but could somehow taste food through chemical analysis. Each group had heard about the human who gave food to travelers and wanted to experience it for themselves. Jack found himself adapting his cooking to accommodate different alien physiologies. Some species couldn't eat certain proteins, others required specific minerals, and a few could only process liquids. But every group that visited seemed to discover something new about the concept of food as more than just fuel. Carl proved invaluable in helping communicate with the different species and understanding their dietary needs. The androids database grew with each new group of visitors, building a comprehensive guide to alien nutrition and preferences. You are becoming famous, Carl observed one evening as they cleaned up after serving a group of amphibious beings who had been amazed by soup. I'm just cooking food, Jack replied. Same as always. But you are teaching them something new, Carl said. Each species that visits here learns about concepts they never had before. Hospitality, pleasure in eating, the social aspects of sharing. Meals. Jack looked around his small diner, thinking about all the alien visitors they had hosted. Each group had been different, but they all shared the same amazement at human food and the way it was prepared and served. Maybe we're doing something important after all, Jack said outside. Another ship was descending through the Martian atmosphere, its lights blinking against the star-filled sky. Jack smiled and started preparing for tomorrow's breakfast, wondering what new species would discover the joy of a good meal served with genuine hospitality. 3 weeks had passed since the evacuation notice arrived. Jack Turner stood alone in his empty diner, watching the last transport ship disappear into the orange Martian sky. New Phoenix was officially a ghost town now, with only Jack and Carl remaining in the entire settlement. The silence was deeper than anything Jack had ever experienced. The life support systems still hummed quietly in the background. Jack had managed to negotiate with the mining company to keep the essential services running for another month. After that, he would have to rely on the diner's backup power and recycling systems. It would be tight, but he believed it could work. Carl moved efficiently around the kitchen, preparing lunch even though there were no customers to serve. The android had adapted to their new routine without complaint. Jack sometimes wondered if Carl understood the situation they were in, or if he simply followed his programming to maintain the diner regardless of circumstances. "Ship approaching from the south," Carl announced, his sensors detecting the vessel before Jack's human eyes could see it. "Configuration unknown, not a standard Earth transport." Jack looked out the window and saw a distant speck growing larger against the red sky. As it came closer, he could see that it was definitely not human-made. The ship was sleek and dark, with curves that seemed almost organic. Smoke was trailing from one of its engines. "Looks like they're in trouble," Jack muttered. Watching the ship struggle to maintain altitude, the vessel touched down hard about 100 meters from the diner, sending up a cloud of red dust. Jack could see that it was badly damaged, with scorch marks along its hull and what looked like weapon impacts. The ship was maybe twice the size of a standard cargo hauler, but its design was completely alien. "Carl, do we have any emergency medical supplies?" Jack asked, already moving toward the door. "The first aid kit is fully stocked," Carl replied. "Are you planning to offer assistance?" "That's what we do here," Jack said, grabbing his jacket. "We help people who need it." Jack stepped outside into the thin Martian air, his breath visible in the cold. The damaged ship sat silent for several minutes before a section of its hull opened like a blooming flower. 3 figures emerged, and Jack's heart nearly stopped. They were not human. The beings were tall and covered in what looked like scales that shifted color from green to brown as they moved. They had long necks and heads that were distinctly reptilian, with large eyes that seemed to take in everything around them. They moved with a fluid grace that was both beautiful and unsettling. Of the beings was clearly injured, supported by the other 2. Dark fluid that might have been blood stained the front of its scaled body. The other 2 were scanning the area with what were obviously weapons, their movements sharp and alert. Jack raised his hand slowly, showing he was unarmed. "I want to help," he called out, not knowing if they could understand him. The aliens froze at the sound of his voice. One of them raised its weapon toward him, while the other continued to support their injured companion. Jack could see intelligence in their large eyes, but also fear and suspicion. "My name is Jack," he said slowly, pointing to himself. "This is my place. I have medical supplies." The uninjured alien that wasn't holding a weapon made a series of clicking sounds that might have been speech. The one with the weapon responded with similar sounds, but kept it pointed at Jack. "Carl," Jack called back toward the diner. "Bring the first aid kit." Slowly, the android emerged from the diner carrying the medical supplies. The aliens tensed at the sight of Carl, clearly unsure what to make of him. Their weapons tracked between Jack and the android. "He's not dangerous," Jack said, gesturing toward Carl. "He's my helper." The injured alien made a weak sound and sagged against its companion. Whatever was wrong with it was getting worse. Jack took a slow step forward. "Please," he said, "let me help." The alien with the weapon made more clicking sounds, and after a moment, the other one responded. They seemed to be having an argument. Finally, the one supporting the injured alien made a decisive clicking sound, and the weapon was lowered slightly. Jack approached carefully, keeping his movement slow and non-threatening. Up close, he could see that the aliens were even more impressive than he had first thought. Their scales were beautiful, shifting through subtle shades of color, and their eyes were intelligent and expressive. The injured alien had what looked like a burn across its chest, possibly from some kind of energy weapon. The wound was deep and still bleeding that dark fluid. Jack had seen similar injuries from mining accidents over the years. "Carl, I need the burn gel and the pressure bandages, Jack said, kneeling beside the injured alien, the alien's companions. Watched tensely as Jack opened the first aid kit. He showed them each item before using it, trying to communicate that he meant no harm. The injured alien's breathing was shallow and rapid. Jack applied the burn gel gently, and the alien made a soft sound that might have been relief. The gel was designed to work on human skin, but it seemed to have a similar effect on the alien's scales. He carefully applied the pressure bandages, working with the same care he would use for any injured person. As he worked, Jack began to hum quietly an old song his mother used to sing when he was hurt as a child. The sound seemed to calm the aliens, and their weapons were gradually lowered. "There," Jack said when he finished. "That should help with the pain and stop the bleeding." The injured alien's breathing seemed easier now. Its companions made soft clicking sounds that sounded like gratitude. One of them reached into what might have been a pocket and pulled out a small crystal that glowed with inner light. "For help," the alien said in heavily accented but understandable English. Jack was shocked to hear it speak his language. "You can understand me?" "Some words," the alien replied. "Learn from." "Trade ships." The alien placed the crystal in Jack's hand. It was warm and seemed to pulse with energy. Jack had never seen anything like it. "Thank you," Jack said. "But you don't need to pay me. I just wanted to help." The alien made more clicking sounds to its companions, and they responded with what sounded like surprise. They seemed to be discussing something important. "You ... give help ... no payment?" the alien asked. "That's right," Jack said. "It's what we do for people who need it." The aliens exchanged more clicking sounds. The injured one was sitting up now, looking much better. It said something to its companions, and they both looked at Jack with what might have been respect. "We ... hungry," the alien said hesitantly. "Long journey. Little food." Jack smiled. "Well, you came to the right place. I run a diner." The aliens looked confused by the word. Jack gestured toward the building behind him, "A place where I cook food for people. Would you like to try some?" The aliens exchanged more clicking sounds. The injured one seemed to be arguing in favor of something, while the other two appeared uncertain. "Food is safe," Jack assured them, "and it's free for anyone who needs it." The concept seemed to amaze them. After more discussion, they helped their injured companion to its feet and followed Jack toward the diner. Carl held the door open as they entered. The aliens looked around the small restaurant with curiosity, taking in the red vinyl seats, the worn counter, and the kitchen equipment. They seemed particularly interested in the smells coming from the kitchen. "What kind of food do you eat?" Jack asked, washing his hands at the sink. "Nutrition paste," one of the aliens replied. "Processed supplements." Jack made a face. "That sounds terrible. How about I make you something with real flavor?" The aliens didn't seem to understand the concept of flavor, but they watched with fascination as Jack began cooking. He decided to start with something simple but hearty: scrambled eggs with cheese, bacon, and toast. As the food cooked, the aliens made soft clicking sounds to each other. The injured one seemed to be explaining something to the others, gesturing toward Jack and Carl. "Names," the injured alien said to Jack. "I am Sktau. This is Skaren and Skyvor." "Nice to meet you," Jack said, flipping the eggs. "I'm Jack, and this is Carl." "Jack," Sktau repeated carefully. "You are ... cook?" "That's right. I cook food for people." "All people?" Jack thought about that. "Anyone who's hungry and needs a meal." The aliens exchanged more clicking sounds. This concept seemed to be as foreign to them as their appearance was to Jack. Jack plated the food and set it in front of the three aliens. They stared at it with uncertainty, clearly unsure what to do with it. "Like this," Jack demonstrated, taking a bite of toast. Sktau carefully picked up a piece of bacon and bit into it. His large eyes widened, and he made a sound that might have been pleasure. He said something rapidly to his companions, who immediately tried the food as well. All three aliens froze as they tasted the eggs and cheese. They looked at each other, then at Jack, then at the food again. Siktow said something in their language that sounded like amazement. "Good?" Jack asked. "Good," Siktow agreed, taking another bite. "Very good. How is this possible?" Jack smiled. "It's called cooking. You take different foods and combine them to make something better." The aliens ate with obvious enjoyment, making soft clicking sounds that Jack was beginning to recognize as expressions of pleasure. They finished every bite and looked hopefully at their empty plates. "More?" Siktow asked. "Of course," Jack said, already reaching for more ingredients, asterisk. Jack Turner stood behind the counter of his small diner, watching the red dust swirl outside the windows. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty streets of New Phoenix, a town that once housed 30,000 miners and their families. Now only Jack remained, stubborn as the rust-colored rocks that dotted the Martian landscape. The diner smelled of coffee and bacon, familiar earth scents that seemed out of place on this alien world. Jack had been cooking the same breakfast for 15 years, first for hungry miners heading to their shifts, then for the few remaining families as the settlement slowly died. Today, like most days in the past 6 months, he cooked for himself, and his android assistant Carl moved behind the counter with mechanical precision, cleaning glasses that were already spotless. The android had been a gift from the mining company when Jack first arrived on Mars. Now Carl was probably worth more than the entire diner, but Jack would never sell him. The android was the closest thing to family he had left on this world. "Another ship left last night," Carl said in his calm electronic voice. "The transport manifest shows the Peterson family departed at 03:00 hours. Jack cracked an egg into the hot pan, listening to it sizzle. "That makes what? Maybe 50 people left in the whole settlement." 47, including yourself, Carl replied. The evacuation notice from Earth's central government arrived this morning. They want all remaining civilians off Mars within 30 days. Jack flipped the egg with practiced ease. He had heard the rumors for months. The mining operations were shutting down because cheaper asteroid mining had made Mars unprofitable. The terraforming project that had taken decades to complete was being abandoned. Earth wanted its people back home. "What about the diner?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. "The building lease expires with the settlement closure. Earth's kitchen will be demolished along with the rest of New Phoenix." Jack placed the egg on a plate next to 2 strips of bacon and a slice of toast. Earth's kitchen was what the miners had called his diner from the very beginning. The name stuck, even though Jack had never bothered to put up an official sign. Everyone just knew. The front door chimed as someone entered. Jack looked up to see Danny Rodriguez, one of the last remaining transport pilots. Danny ran cargo between Mars and the outer stations, one of the few jobs that still paid on this dying world. "Morning, Jack," Danny said, sliding onto his usual. "Stool at the counter. The usual, please." Jack nodded and started cooking another breakfast. Danny had been coming to the diner for 3 years, ever since he started running the Mars route. He was a good man, quiet and dependable. Jack would miss him when he was gone. "Heard you got your evacuation notice," Danny said, watching Jack work. "Yep, 30 days to pack up and head home." Jack's voice was steady, but his hands moved a little faster as he cooked. "You going to do it?" Jack was quiet for a moment. He had been born on Earth, grew up in a small town in Kansas where his family ran a restaurant. When the Mars mining boom started, he signed up as an engineer, thinking he would make his fortune and return home rich. Instead, he found something else entirely. "I don't know," Jack admitted. "This place has been my home for 15 years. I built something here." Danny accepted his plate with a grateful nod. "The company is offering good money for relocation. Fresh start back on Earth." "I'm 62 years old, Danny. 204. Fresh starts. The truth was more complicated than that. Jack had tried to go back to Earth twice in the past 15 years. Both times, He felt like a stranger in his own world. The crowds, the noise, the constant rush of city life made him uncomfortable. Mars was quiet, peaceful in its own way. Here, he knew everyone who walked through his door. He mattered that Carl poured Danny fresh coffee without being asked. The android had learned the routines of every regular customer over the years. It was one of the things that made Earth's kitchen special. "What about Lisa?" Danny asked. "She's still running freight to the outer colonies?" Jack's face softened at the mention of his daughter. Lisa was his only child, born on Mars during the early years of the settlement. She had grown up in the diner, helping him cook and serve customers. Now she was 32, captain of her own cargo ship, making runs to Jupiter's moons and beyond. "She calls every week," Jack said. "Keeps telling me to come live with her on Titan. Says there's opportunities there." "Titan's a good place," Danny agreed. "Growing fast." Jack wiped down the counter, thinking about his daughter. Lisa had inherited his stubborn streak and his love of cooking. She probably made better food than he did now, cooking for her crew in the cramped galley of her ship. But she had also inherited his restlessness, his need to keep moving. The door chimed again. This time it was Martha Kim, one of the few remaining shopkeepers in town. She ran a small store that sold supplies to the transport pilots and the handful of people who still lived in New Phoenix. "Morning, Martha," Jack called out. "Coffee, please." Martha looked tired. She had been trying to keep her store open, even as fewer and fewer customers came through her door. "I heard about the evacuation order. News travels fast in a town this size," Jack said, pouring her coffee. "What are you going to do?" It was the question everyone was asking. Jack had built his life around this diner, around serving food to people who needed it. The miners had needed hearty breakfast before their shifts. The families had needed a place to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries. The transport pilots needed hot meals and familiar faces when they came in from the cold darkness of space. "I'm thinking about staying," Jack said quietly. Martha and Danny both looked at him in surprise. Carl stopped cleaning glasses and turned his attention to the conversation. "Jack, you can't stay here alone," Martha said. "The life support systems will be shut down. The water recycling, the air processors, everything. The diner has its own backup systems," Jack replied. "Carl and I could manage." "But why?" Danny asked. "There won't be anyone left to serve." Jack looked around his small diner. The red vinyl seats were worn but clean. The counter was scratched from years of use but still solid. The kitchen equipment was old but reliable. This was more than a business to him. It was home. "Ships still pass through this area," Jack said. "Transport pilots, cargo haulers, sometimes even passenger vessels. They need a place to stop, to refuel, to get a decent meal. The big corporations have automated stations for that," Martha pointed out. "Automated stations don't serve real food," Jack said. "They don't ask about your family or remember how you like your coffee. They don't care if you've had a hard day or if you're missing home." Carl made a small electronic sound that might have been agreement. The android had seen thousands of people pass through the diner over the years. He had learned to recognize the signs of homesickness, loneliness, and exhaustion that spacers carried with them. "I'm not ready to give up on this place," Jack said finally. "Maybe I'm being foolish, but I think there's still a purpose for Earth's kitchen." Martha reached across the counter and squeezed his hand. "You're not foolish, Jack. You're brave." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows of the diner. In the distance, the last transport ship of the day was preparing for departure, its engines glowing against the rust-colored sky. Soon, New Phoenix would be empty except for one stubborn cook and his android companion. Jack started cleaning the grill, preparing for whatever tomorrow might bring.